Okay, so we're going to start our coding. I'm going to open up my lesson 9 folder in PHP Storm. Now, some of you last week were getting errors if you were using DreamHost. In your header, it was saying, when we tried to call session start, we would see an error saying that the headers were already sent. Fix that was simply to put OB start at the top of our header and OB flush at the bottom of our footer, and then that error is going to go away. So I added OB flush down here, OB start at the top. I have this running both locally as well as on the server. Here I have it on DreamHost. So I think maybe today, why not, I'll work live on the server on DreamHost instead of local just for today. So there's my lesson 9, and I probably just want to also change my HT access. So if we have any errors, it goes to lesson 9 rather than lesson 8. For those of you who are hosting on Azure, HT access doesn't work on Azure because Azure is a Windows server, an IIS server. So I did put a posting up on Blackboard for you in terms of how to configure your 404. With Azure, we create a web.config file. This is kind of equivalent to an HT access file. So we just set our 404 errors, our general errors to go to error, and our 404 errors to go to 404.php. And that took care of your 404 if you were running on Azure. Oops. I want to open up, got the wrong project, so I'll just open up my lesson 9 project. I'll close everything. Okay, so now I should be able to log in. The credential we created a few weeks ago. And once I've logged in, I can add, edit, delete. My data is a little less because before I was working on my local database, now I'm working on my DreamHost database. So there's only three files here. Now, if you remember, we already set up, when we built our albums table, we actually already set up a place to store the album names. Because here was the script that we used way back in week 2 when we set up our albums table, what that should look like. So we've already got a field called cover that we can use for storing the image name. So we don't have to modify our database. It's already set up for that. But before we work on getting the albums actually saved, we want to just do a basic upload example first, just not connected with our database. So let's create a new PHP file. We'll just call this one upload.php. So this will just be a test. Upload test form, I'll just put in as the title. This could actually be an HTML file. We don't actually need any PHP on here. So we'll just put on a form. Our method will be post as usual. And our action can be maybe save upload.php. So this will be the page that processes our upload. We also need that encoding type attribute so that it can convert our file from its native format to binary to copy it to the server. So we're going to set the encoding type to this option, multi-part/form-data. If we don't do this, our file won't get copied to the web server. So that attribute is required. So we could just put on a simple label. We'll put on a label, and we'll put on an input that we call any file. What type do we need to pick here? Right. We need file. So when the user click, it'll give them a browse button, and when they click it, it'll bring up a file dialog box. This is one of the only even remotely intelligent HTML tags. Most HTML tags, they have no real functionality or no logic, but this will actually bring up a file dialog box, regardless of the user's operating system. And then we'll just put on a button that says upload. And we won't bother with a header, a footer, any CSS, just a simple example for now. So now we should be able to view this page in our browser. I'm going to copy it up to FileZilla. I said I'll work live today on the web server rather than on my local server. Just check it out. So it looks like this. Now, different browsers will actually render this slightly differently. In Firefox, it says choose any file, and it gives me a browse button. Chrome's implementation of the file input type's a little different. At a browse, it says choose file. Internet Explorer, it actually looks like a text box, although even if I click it, it still brings up the file dialog box. So we have no real control over this. Each browser interprets that control and renders it slightly differently. But the functionality is the same in all the cases, right? So we can browse any file, upload it. Whoops. My htaccess is going the wrong place. Now we get a 404 error. That's fine because we don't have a save upload page yet. Okay, that's okay. Then we go to 404. That's kind of what should happen. So there's all our code. It's just plain old HTML. So now we need to build our save upload.php page and do the things we talked about. We want to check the file type. We want to get the file name. We probably want to give it a unique name. And then we want to save it to the web server. So where should we save the file? And we may need to. We also talked about dealing with permissions. So where should we save the file upload? Should we just save it in the root with all the PHP pages, or should we save it somewhere else? Where do we want the file to be saved to? Yeah, we probably want another directory. A directory here, and I'll call it uploads. So any files the user uploads go in that folder. So typically we'll make a subfolder for those. So we want them to go in here. If you're just using WAMP or XAMPP, well, you can just make the directory here in Windows or in Finder. Make an uploads folder inside of lesson 9. And now we'll make a new PHP page called save upload. Inside the body, we'll just put on some PHP tags. So we'll create a variable called $name. So how do we get the name of the file, the original file name that the user uploaded? We're going to use one of these collections. Which one do you think it is? I type $_. Here are the 8 built-in collections in the PHP library. Which one of these will give us information about that file upload? Raj?
I'm not sure, but it should be files.
You got it. So instead of post, we're looking at the files array or files collection. And now we have to specify the name of the input type equals file, which we called any file. That was the name of our input type. And now this object is its own array, and it has several properties of its own. And we're interested in the name property. And let's just echo. We just want to print out the name of the file that got uploaded. And if by using double quotes, I can write my PHP variable right inside the double quotes. So let's try our file again. You may, if you're working on the web server, upload the save page and try uploading the same file now, and we should get the name of the file being printed out on the page. So now if I upload this file, the original name was. If I go and pick a different file, it'll show me the name. In fact, if we want to see all the things, we could even do this. Try it like this. We'll just print out the entire object, which will be an array, so we can see what other things we have access to besides just the name. Maybe wanted to do this first even. Probably should have done this first before we started looking at the individual properties. Let's see what happens now. So if I hit refresh, notice it says, it's prompting me, do you want to resend the original form submission? So I'll just say resend. So it shows me it's an array. I think we can use a different function. This should show us all of the values. I have to do it this way. So print R will take an array, and it will show us all the elements in the array all at once. I think that's the function we want. So here's what we get. The first property is the name, which is the second property is the type, which it says is image/JPEG. The third one is a temporary name. And then it shows us error is 0, so there was no error code. Our upload worked properly. And that's our size in bytes. Okay, so we have to multiply that by 1024 to get the kilobytes. Now, if I refresh, notice that value. I'm going to re-upload the same file again. Notice this TMP name value changed. So what do you suppose that's doing? What do you suppose the TMP name means? It is, yeah. Why is that value changing though? If we go and look in our uploads folder, there's nothing here yet, right? So that file isn't actually saved permanently. So what do you suppose this TMP name might be representing?
So the file we upload do not override.
Close in a way.
The server accepts the file and stores it in a temporary folder, and each time it just saves it again with different names.
Right. Now, the way that an Apache server works is when you upload a file with PHP, it saves it to a temporary location in the server's cache, but it won't stay there. So ultimately, we need to copy the file from this location into our uploads folder if we want to save the file permanently. It will expire. So if we upload to the same place again and again, the server puts it in a different spot, gives it a different address each time. But that's only a temporary place in cache. It won't store permanently. So we're going to have to move it. We have to find where the file is and then move it to our uploads folder. So we can access the name, the type, the temporary location, the size, and if there is an error. These are all the things we have access to. Now, there is one trick about this. This is not perfect, the file type. I'm going to show you why. Let's say I do this. So I'm going to create a new text file. You don't have to do this, but I want to show you how this works. So I'm going to save this as not an image.txt. So here's my file, not an image.txt. If I upload it, shows me the name, and it says the content is a text plane. So it's a text file. Now I'm going to take this file so now I've given it a JPEG extension, but the file type is not actually JPEG, right? It's still a text document. That's the actual MIME content type. So now I go and pick it as a JPEG. So this type, I've kind of spoofed it. It's assuming the file type based on the file extension, but that file's not actually a JPEG. So just checking the extension is usually not good enough. Let's see what happens if I do this on Facebook. So I'm going to add a photo and pick that file. So Facebook is checking more than just the extension. They're actually checking the MIME content type. Now, there is a library for PHP to do this. The problem is that library is not installed on the DreamHost web server. So we can't use it. So for today in class, all we can really do is check the extension. But in a real application, we're going to want to actually check the real content type because it's possible to spoof these. So we can set up a variable here. But now it should print the file name. The next line should be the file type. At least the file type based on the extension. May not be the right file type. So it gives us the name, gives us type, and now it gives us the size as well. So we can evaluate, we can decide if that file size is too big or too small, or if it's okay. So now the last thing we want to do is we need to move the file out of this location and copy it to our uploads folder. So let's also set up a variable. So in PHP, it's called the TMP name. That's the spotting cache where the file got uploaded to. So what we want to do now is move the file from here to the uploads folder. And then after, we're going to have to do what Krupa suggests. We're going to have to somehow make sure we're not overwriting the file if two users upload a file with the same name. So now we're going to copy from temp directory the uploads folder. So PHP has some really strangely named functions. The function for copying a file from one place to another actually has a really good name. Anybody have any idea what that function name is called? Close. Function is move. And it takes two parameters. What file, where's the file now, and where do we want it to go? So what value represents the current location? Yeah, that $ temp name. That's the cache location. So from temp name to uploads / name. So our uploads folder, and for now, we'll keep the original name. Called on the user's computer or device, we're going to keep that same name for now. We'll deal with the duplicates in a minute. So let's try this out. We'll see if it works, but I have a feeling we're also going to have to enable permissions on our uploads folder. We're going to have to enable write permissions. This might fail. So we'll re-upload. I'll pick something else. So I can pick any kind of file, really. I'm going to click upload. Okay, so we didn't get an error. But now, when I go into uploads and refresh, okay, so we didn't actually have to set any permission. So my file has now been copied to the server with the original name. So notice this is time-stamped 3:30:05 p.m. What's going to happen if I upload? There's a few possibilities. What happens if I try and upload the exact same file again? There's three possibilities. It will overwrite this file, like born to run within brackets 1 after it, or it'll generate an error. What do you think is likely to happen on the DreamHost server? You think it'll overwrite? Any other opinions? You think it'd be an error saying file already exists? Well, one way to find out. Right? I'll just refresh and resend the same form post. We have a different temporary spot. So this said 3:30:05. So what happens? Right, overwrites that file. So that old one is gone, which is potentially a problem if those are two different users uploading a file with that same name. The second user is now overwritten the first user's file. So before we call move uploaded file, we probably want to give some kind of unique name. So there's a bunch of ways we can do it. PHP has a built-in function called unique ID. And it takes two parameters. What is the prefix? So in this case, maybe what we'll do is we'll start our file name with the original name, but then we'll add on the unique ID at the end. I think we want this to be, name, and we'll put a dash. So the original file name and then a dash, and then a unique identifier at the end. That is true. We're going to take the original file name, add a dash on the end, and then use PHP to generate a random set of numbers on the end. We'll try it, see how this works.
Actually break the file extension.
It breaks the file extension.
Because it adds the name after the file extension. So
Right, okay.
so what file it is.
So good point. So maybe we want to do, maybe we want the unique ID at the beginning and then a dash and the original name at the end. Maybe that makes more sense. So we can just put that in as an empty string, no prefix, nothing at the beginning. And we'll just depend on a dash and then the name. So it'll be like ABC 1 2 3 4 5 6 dash photo.jpg. See how that works.
That works.
Okay. So now I'll resubmit. And now if I refresh my uploads, right, we get this unique string of letters and numbers and then a dash and then my original file name. So if I do another one now, it shouldn't overwrite this, right? So this one's timestamped 3/34/23. If I resubmit my upload now, so now we've taken care of the duplication. So two users can upload a file with the same original name, but now we're storing them uniquely. So we probably want to do this when we're uploading files. So if we want to check the type, we probably can really only check the extension or check the file type based on the extension with DreamHost. I'm not sure if you're running this on Azure, if the MIME content type function works. It doesn't work on DreamHost. That extension is not installed, unfortunately. So if I upload it again, I should get another copy again with a unique ID. So they're always going to be. So notice the first part is the same or similar, but the second part's different. Sorry, up to about there. It's the same. So it's not terribly complicated. We're going to get the name. We'll do some checking that the size and type are within our what we want to allow. We'll generate a unique name, and then we call move uploaded file. And this will work for any kind of file, a text document, a zip, a JPEG, a PNG, an audio video file, anything we want. Maybe just add here, unique ID is a built-in So we didn't use size, but we could see that when we used printr, it also showed us the size in bytes of that file upload. So what we want to do now, are there any questions about our code here? A few new things here, a few functions we haven't used before. Raj.
Here's adding a unique ID automatically can be set like manually, like as you already said that you said with the order ID.
Sure, for sure you could. So one way of doing it, yeah, typically, so what I did on the TreasureNet website, first I would save the order to the database and generate the order number, and then I would just rename the image when I saved the final image. I got rid of the original name at all. I completely removed the original name, so all of the photos were simply the order number .jpg.
Like Facebook does, I think whenever we download any image from Facebook, they have their own ID.
Yeah, they're just right. So they probably have like an images table or a photos table. So when you upload, right, it creates a new image in the database. They assign an ID. They probably just use that ID to rename is probably what they do, right? Because every photo in the database has a unique ID. Right? YouTube does the same thing with your videos, right? Here's a video. So they generate some unique code. If, if you upload this as, demo1.wmv or AVI, they're probably renaming it again to something unique in the database. So it doesn't have to be random. Yeah, in fact, it's better if you have some way to make them descriptive, so much that's even better. Because then you can identify those descriptively. In fact, with our orders, not only was it your order number, it was actually the order item number, because you could buy 3 products on one order. So we couldn't use the order number. The order number was for your whole purchase. But then there were individual items, so we actually used the order item ID. We save the first item from your cart to the database, rename the first image to that one, save the next one. So they were meaningful and descriptive, right? We knew what those image names meant, is a good idea. Okay. That's a very good question. Any other questions about our code here? Anything else we should talk about before we kind of move this code into our little music library? So we want to integrate some of this code on our album details form. So when we add a new album or edit, we can upload an image, and then we want to integrate some of this code to our save album page. Can we upload the file, but we can save the file name here. Right now, all the cover values, they're all null, right? We have no cover links in our albums. Okay, so let's open up our album details page. So we want to add 2 or 3 things here. What things do we need to add to this form? We don't have to take anything out, but we need to make a couple of additions. So when we go here and we want to add when I add a new album, we also want to be able to include that cover. Yeah, so we're going to need the input type equals file here to give the user a browse button. We're also going to need to add something else in our HTML that won't be visible to the user, but what did we say our form needs to make that upload work? Yeah, we need the encoding type. I'm just going to show you what happens without it. I'll just take the encoding type out for a minute on my form and re-upload it. You don't have to change yours. I'm just going to demonstrate. So there is no file. The file never gets transferred without that encoding type attribute. Just gets no error, it just gets ignored. So that attribute we need to have. So on our album details in our form, let's add the encoding type. And down here, after our artist field set, we want another one. We'll put on a label. Now we won't make this required. We could add an album because maybe we don't have the album cover yet. So we can still add or edit, save an album without adding. Now we'll have input name equals cover, ID equals cover, but importantly, we need type equals file. So this will give the user a browse button. Okay, so we're going to add our encoding type to our form, and we're adding our cover field set and section. Just see how it looks. So it's going to look like this now. Again, in a different browser or render slightly differently. So we add the encoding type in our form and add our field set down below. Later on, we're also going to add an if statement here that if we already have an existing cover uploaded, we want to display the image on here. When you're editing the album, we should show the current cover so the user could, if they want, upload a different photo. They could modify it if that maybe the photo they uploaded turns out not to look very good and they want to change it. So we'll add that later. We'll get the upload part working first. I think we'll also maybe create a folder at our lesson 9. Why don't we create a separate folder for storing all the album covers? We won't put them in the uploads folder. We'll maybe make a covers folder. So I'm going to go back to FileZilla. We won't really use this uploads folder. That was just for kind of testing purposes. I'll make a new directory called covers. So that's where we want to save all the album photos to. Okay. So they'll go in here. You could call it albums, album covers. You can call that folder anything you like. If you want to save them to the uploads folder we already built, that's fine. So when you think you've got all the code, make sure you upload your file and that your input type file is there, and you can click browse and you'll get your file dialog box. And then our next step is we're going to need to write some code to process that upload over on our save album page. So we're going to want to check the file type. We're going to want to generate a unique name. And then we're going to want to include that name in our insert and update statements to save the file name to the, we'll save the file to our covers folder and we'll save the name in our database. So let's open up our album details page. Does anybody still need this page? We'll open up Save Album. So maybe what we'll do after our validation, where we're checking that title, year, and artist are not empty, this is probably a good place to check whether we have a cover uploaded, and if so, we want to make sure it's the right type and do those things. So we're going to check for a cover upload if we have one. I guess we can check if file's cover is not empty. That means the user included a file. So maybe the first thing we'll do is get the name. Right, so now we know the original name. What file types should we allow? Again, we can really only check the extension. What extensions should be valid, do you think, for album covers? Okay, yep, so JPG, PNG, could be GIF, maybe even SVG, perhaps. So we want to make sure that the file extension is one of those four. So let's get well, we can actually just check the extension. So let's see how we do this. We could just check the last 3 characters of the file name, potentially. There's a few different ways we could do this. We want to think about the most efficient way. Oh, okay, we could do it this way. We use the PHP as a function called explode. It will split up a string. So this should give us, whoops. I have to think for a minute. As an array, so just create an array that will convert it to a list. So basically divide the file name from the extension. So now we can say type equals 1. That should give us whatever text is to the right of the period, the file extension.
What if they put some dot in the name?
Sorry?
What if the user puts a dot in the name?
Good question. Can we do that? Rename. Yeah, okay. So that's a good point. So that's maybe not our best option.
I think we can use and explode.
Well, but okay, so how would you use it?
And it should be $i equals to n, and then bracket,
Yep.
explode, and before semicolon bracket should be good. I think.
Let's
that's
see.
good.
That would give us the last one?
Yeah. That will be one.
Okay, we could try it. You know what? Our save page isn't a bad place to. Okay. So we're going to allow JPEG, PNG, GIF, SVG. So now we just want to check those four. Not sure I'm really happy with the efficiency of this, but we'll try it. So if the user uploaded something, but it's none of these, then we can generate an error. And say OK is false. We probably also have to convert to lowercase because the extension could have capital letters. Someone could have the file as capital P, capital N, capital G. Yeah, I think it's str to lowercase. Lower. Explode. So we'll try and get the extension and we'll convert it to lowercase. And if the extension value is not one of those four, JPG, PNG, GIF, SVG, will generate an error. I'm going to upload this and try it. I'll try uploading a text file or a Word document, and it should say that we should see an invalid image type. Then we'll stop and take a break and we'll finish this after. So let's see if we go and edit an album here. I pick a text document. Okay, so it says invalid image. That's good. If I pick a proper JPEG, it won't save it yet, but I shouldn't get that error. Ah, okay, so something's not quite right with our logic. Maybe we'll just do this for a minute. Let's echo that out. Let's see what this evaluates to. Ah, good point, because it can't be all of them. Thank you. Well, but see, well, then our logic's still not right. That won't work either. I have to rewrite our condition. You have a suggestion?
Can we set an array to variable, and in that array there should these all formats should be there, and extensions should be there.
Yes.
And then we can check that variable.
That's a good idea. Okay, I like that suggestion. We can create an array called file types. And then we just check if the, okay. Yeah, so there's an in array function. So the needle is what we're looking for. This should be if not in the array. That might work. We'll try it and see. So when I use a JPEG, okay, it only gave me one character. So our function here isn't quite. I have to think about the best way to get our file extension. We'll have to manipulate the string a little bit more.
Like using array 1 or like, yeah, I think so. Try with like array 3 or something like that.
Okay, well, hang on just a sec. Let's have a look at that and see what it gives us. That'll maybe give us a clue.
Sure.
So it does actually give us, yes, you're right, it does give us JPG. But it would actually be converting the whole thing. So this removes everything up to and including the period. And then we'll just convert it to lowercase. So we'll try one more time. If I pick text document, tells me it's TXT invalid. If I pick JPEG, yeah. Okay. So I can comment that out. We don't need that. So this gives us the extension, the end and explode. As Raj suggested, we'll convert it to lowercase and then we'll compare it and see if it's one of those 4 values. And if it's not in that array, it's invalid. Okay. So what we'll do now, it's 4 o'clock, so why don't we take a break here, and after the break, we'll generate a unique name for that file. We'll save it to our covers, move uploaded file, and then we need to also modify our insert, update, and parameters to include that cover variable so that we're also storing the name of the image in our database. So we'll do that, and then we'll need to get it so that our images will also display. Not only are we uploading them, but we can also display them. We should be able to do that all in the next hour. So we'll take a break here.